Hello, everyone.
Ma'am.
Yeah, actually,
Good
I'm just
afternoon, ma'am.
Nuri, we're just waiting for Supriya ma'am to join. So she'll be joining in another 5 minutes and then we'll start it. Okay? Right?
Okay, no problem, ma'am. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Excuse me. I'll just call ma'am once and see, is ma'am joined? Supriya ma'am joined? No. No. I'll just call her once. Hello, Arvind. Don't sir.
Yes, ma'am. Tell me.
Only thing is waiting for ma'am. She is not
Yes.
responding. Just sorry to keep you waiting. We'll just get back, sir. So,
Absolutely. Let me know when to start.
No,
Yeah.
no problem.
yeah. Yeah, please wait. Ma'am is not lifting the phone. I'm trying to call her. She must be in some meeting or something. So,
Good afternoon, Shamla ma'am. Am I audible, Shamla madam?
yes, ma'am, you are audible. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Don sir.
Don't, sir?
Very good afternoon.
Yeah.
My apologies for the delay. I was held up in another meeting. I couldn't get out of it. I'm so sorry.
No problem. Please tell me.
Okay, ma'am, we'll start.
Yes, ma'am. Shamla ma'am, please begin.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, respected madam, and our guest for
Good
today's
afternoon,
lecture.
ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Arvind Don from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. Moving ahead on the series of Sanjeevayati, today we have arranged a lecture on the legal aspects in business. To remind you all, today is a World Environment Day, and being quite synonymous to the word environment, I think business needs to understand its environment very well. So relating to that, today we'll talk about how the legal aspects of business actually affect the various legal aspects of business, and this legal part of the environment, how does it affect the business, is what we're going to learn today. So we have with us today Dr. Arvind Don from St. Xavier's College, who's going to talk on this topic. Before I introduce him and we ask him to start, I would request Supriya ma'am to say a few words, please.
Thank you, Shamla ma'am. Good afternoon, Don sir, Shamla ma'am, and all other friends, our students who have joined this session. It's a Saturday afternoon, and like Shamla ma'am said, today is the Environment Day. And we, of all the people in last 1.5 years, have actually experienced the damage that we have done to this environment. And here, when I talk of environment, I mean the air, the water, and everything. And since the COVID-19 pandemic began, we all sat at home, the pollution has decreased, the water has become cleaner, and especially for people who live in areas like Delhi and National Capital Region, the NCR region, a massive change has been seen in the atmosphere. In fact, there were the video clips that came rampant on WhatsApp actually showed animals, birds, greenery, and the environment really cleaned up. So, not that I'm recommending a lockdown. I'm absolutely tired and fed up of being at home, and I'm so wanting to see all the students on campus. But an important message has come through that environment is an important aspect, irrespective of what we define as environment. Whether it is the environment we talk about, air, water, that kind of thing, or like Chamla Madam mentioned, the environment that we talk about, the business environment. And to clean up or to keep business environment under control, we have a huge plethora of legal rules made, regulations in place. Now the question is, how many of us or how many businesses actually are following every word of the rule and the regulation to the T? Then, if we are bound by certain rules and regulations, is somebody misusing them too? Is someone forcing us to do something different using the same loopholes that exist in this? And there are so many aspects of business environment that we can learn. I'm sure in your next term, when you learn business policies, you will learn something called pestle analysis, and you will find that the business environment is affected by various factors: political, economic, social, and the L in pestle analysis stands for the legal aspect, which is what we are very, very eager to learn from Dr. Arvind Dhon today. So let me not be the barrier between our learning process, the knowledge we are here to gain. Let us go ahead. I'm going to stop here and hand the mic back to Shamla ma'am. And at this point, I welcome all of you to the series Sanjivayati, the Rejuvenation. Let us listen to legal aspects of business. Over to you, Shamla ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So let me take the pleasure of introducing Dr. Arvind Dhon. He has a wide experience of 34 years, including 24 years of teaching and 10 years of corporate career holding the middle management positions in reputed Indian companies. In his long years of teaching, he has had around 155 research papers published in ISSN journals, and 166 research papers published in conferences and seminars. And it will be a huge thing. He's got so many qualifications to his credit. He is an LLM, MCOM, MMS, MBA, MSc, MLS, MSW, MLib, MA in, I think, three things. He has done MA in PM and IR, Criminology and Police Administration, Rural Management. He's a gold medalist in MPS. He has doctorate in he has a doctorate in Commerce as well as doctorate in DLED. So huge number of qualifications. Welcome to you, sir. And he's got a wide experience in subjects like accountancy, management, banking, corporate finance. He believes in a philosophy that once a learner, forever a learner. So his qualifications say that he's learning, and his learning is not stopping. Okay, sir, welcome you. Without any delay, I request you to please deliver your lecture.
A very good afternoon to all the participants over here. My special thanks goes to Head of the Department of Commerce, Savitribai Phule, Pune University, Dr. Supriya Patil Madam. Secondly, I would like to thank Dr. Shamla Madam, faculty member, Department of Commerce, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. Is my voice audible and the screen display visible? Please.
Voice is clear. No issues, sir. Voice is
Thank you so much.
clear. Yeah.
As Supriya Madam rightly indicated, environment, there are two facets of environment, and as learners in the field of commerce, we try to look one as the natural environment, tree, water, air, surroundings, birds, animals, the living species. The second aspect of environment is in case of a business, while we understand the business environment, the factors which influences the business enterprise favorably or acting as a hindrance for its progress and growth. So as learners in business managers, they need to understand the business environment by splitting up into pestle analysis, political, economic, social, cultural, technological, ecological, and legal. So I'm taking up that in the pestle acronym, the last letter is L, and that is legal environment. So today we are going to touch upon the legal aspects of business, which is very much a part of legal environment. Legal environment is a big ocean. I'm just trying to pick up certain droplets from that during my 1 hour of session and interaction with you, how the legal environment will influence the business, picking up only certain petals from it. It is a huge gauntlet, legal environment of business, which keeps on influencing. Myself, Arvindo. I'm an alumni of Department of Commerce and Research Center, University of Pune. This was the name of the department and the university before it was now renamed as Savitribai Phule Pune University. I used to be a visiting faculty also in this department for MPhil as well as MCOM courses. I obtained my guidance for my doctoral degree or PhD under Dr. Sanjay Kaptan, the former head of Department of Commerce and Research Center, University of Pune. So this is my small introduction. I'm from the department and not anyone from an outside person. During the presentation, in this short 1 hour presentation, I will keep my stopwatch on so that I have an alert to close dot within 1 hour from now. It will touch upon introduction, career opportunities in law. Select statutes would be touched upon. Landmark case laws will be looked into, and the session will be concluded. If you have to introduce about law, I will request everyone to mute their mic. Thank you so much. At the end of the session, definitely question answers would be taken up. So I will devote time for that part of the question answer also. I've kept the timing for that also. So I've put the stopwatch on. If we try to relate to the legal facets, the regulatory environment which influences business enterprises and all, we try to go to the base of the law. Law has various branches: constitutional law, criminal law, environmental law, law related with business and intellectual property rights, human rights related law, and so on. We are relating to business related law, rules, regulation. Ignorance of law is no excuse. It's a Latin maxim which reads as ignotia juris non excusat. In law, we do come across Latin maxims. Indian law has derived its roots from the common law nations. And so the Latin words, many a time, it is being flashed into. In India, when we try to look into, there are various kinds of courts. The apex court being the Supreme Court of India. Then there are high courts for each and every state, and at times more than one state joining together and having a high court of theirs, such as High Court of Maharashtra and Goa. So we have high court at Mumbai, the Bombay High Court. Likewise, the High Court of Punjab and Chandigarh. So two different states joining together, and then one High Court. We have Sessions Court, City Civil Court, the Chief Metropolitan Magistrates Court, Metropolitan Magistrates Court, the court which deals with rent, landlord related matters, the rent issues and all, the court of small causes, cooperative courts, family courts, industrial and labor courts, district court, motor accident claims tribunal, CAT, Central Administrative Tribunal, DRT, debt recovery tribunals, and so on. Family courts, yes, definitely are there. So there are n number of courts in India when we try to relate, the apex being the High Court. A tribunal is a quasi-judicial body wherein strict formalities and procedures which are laid down in the Civil Procedure Code is not being followed. The procedures are being relaxed. The objective is speedy justice to be provided. Broadly, these courts can be classified into two broad groupings. Yes, at apex level is the Supreme Court. The next in order is the High Court. When we look at the chart, the chronological we try to get at the apex is the Supreme Court in this flow chart, and at the lower end are the lower courts which are there. So any matter which is adjudicated by the lower court, if the parties intend to go in for an appeal, then the matter would be taken up to the next higher level. These courts are further subdivided into the courts which are there in the metropolitan regions. For instance, the court in the city of Mumbai, and in the district areas which are non-metropolitan regions. Broadly, the matters, even though the law we classify into environmental law, criminal law, civil law, business and intellectual property rights, family related matters which are there, rent related matters, but the broad classification is into two buckets. One is either it is a civil matter or it is a criminal matter. So down the chart, we can see on both the side, be it metropolitan, be it district and sessions level court, the broad division is civil or criminal matter broadly. Business related matters, by and large, business law related matters would be falling into the grouping of the civil related matter. There are certain offences which are labeled as criminal, and then the criminal jurisdiction also applies in such cases which are there. There are a lot of career opportunities in law, even for students who are pursuing commerce related courses. Even after post graduation in commerce, many a time people feel, okay, MCOM is done. This is the full stop of the learning in life. Learning is an ocean. It is just like on a seashore, one stands, one can see up to the horizon, one enters in a boat and then moves till that point. They still further and still further, still further. It is never ending. So it is not that one has picked up commerce. That does not mean one is isolated from law. There's a business law, a great field which is there where commerce students, after pursuing even their PhD in commerce and business related studies, can take up law after pursuing the law related studies. Not without pursuing any law related study, but after pursuing formal law related studies and all, that is LLB degree, at least the minimum which is essential in order to practice in the courts in India, then one can pursue business related matters. Business people have, those who have obtained formal knowledge in business, have strong groundings in business and understand the concept. They are able to relate the business law in a very nice way. Somebody who has studied finance will be able to easily understand capital market related law, SEBI Act, and then apply it in that case. The career opportunities are, one can take up litigation, non-litigation, being an advocate, being a legal consultant and a lawyer. The difference between an advocate and a lawyer is one who has obtained a formal law degree is a lawyer, but one who has obtained a license to practice, which is from the Sanat, after passing the All India Bar Examination, and after registering under the State Bar Council, one would be termed as an advocate. That's a difference between that. Being a corporate counsel, representing the corporates, being a legal officer in legal officer, manager, general manager, executive, different designations are given in organization, be it public sector, private sector, taking up the issues of resolving the matter outside the court, following a legal procedure which is laid down under Arbitration and Conciliation Act. So being an arbitrator, taking up arbitration matter, being a public prosecutor, representing criminal matters on behalf of the state, or being an assistant public prosecutor. Public prosecutor is in a high court. Assistant public prosecutors are in the subordinate court. Being civil judge, being a judge who is specialized in criminal matters, appearing for and subsequently clearing JMFC exam, which provides an opportunity to be a magistrate at the subordinate court and subsequently would be elevated based on the performance. A government employment and opportunity MPSC examinations are there for that. Being a high court or a Supreme Court judge, being a solicitor, for which after LLB there are special examinations one need to appear. Being a faculty in the branch of law, assistant professor, associate professor, professors, adjunct faculties, visiting faculty, being a researcher in law. Research is there in every field, so even the degrees of MPhil, PhD, DLit are in the field of law. Taking up legal journalism, which is a niche area in journalism. Being a jurist, contributing to various aspects, ideas. Being an employee in a legal department in an organization and so on. There are great amount of career opportunities in the branch of law. So the sources of business law, if we try to look into the source of every law in India, is the Constitution of India, which is the prime book, and no law can be in contravention to the Constitution of India. Beyond that are the various statutes, be it there are different names of it. We can name it as statute, we can name it as an act, we can name it as an enactment, we can name it as a law. All these things are there. And the cases which are decided. We do follow a system which is followed by the common law nations of United Kingdom, the earlier colonial rule in India, and the same good practices in this connection are being continued, which tries to relate to the precedents. If an earlier matter has been decided having the same situation, facts and all, the adjudicating body need not once again sit and go through the matter once again, which will be a lot of time consuming process. Just referring to the previous decided case, the decision is being given. So there's a law precedents which acts, and the superior court's decision has to be abided by the subordinate courts always. It doesn't go other way around, that the subordinate courts decided cases will be abided by the superior courts. So during my discussion on the statutes related with business, I picked up a few of them so that it will suffice our requirement to give a preliminary introduction. The case laws, landmark case laws are being put down. The Companies Act. The object of this act is to consolidate and to amend the law relating with the companies. We do know that prior to 2013, it was the 1956 Act relating to the Companies Act and so on. A landmark case in Companies Act is Salomon versus Salomon. And this landmark case is on lifting of the corporate veil. If we shortly look at the facts of the case, some of you might recall some incidences, something like this, which you have read somewhere, come across. Salomon was a dealer in leather shoes. Now his business, he tried to convert it into a company. wherein he himself, his wife, daughter, 4 sons were involved, and they were being made as shareholders of the company. And a memorandum of association was drafted. So sole proprietary business, which was dealing in leather shoes, was converted into a company. The day it was converted into a company, at that point of time, at that juncture, the company was in sound financial condition. That is a business. Prior to it being getting converted into company, a sole proprietary concern. That sole proprietary concern business was in a sound financial condition and doing extremely well. Subsequently, over a period of time, and the shares were issued to these parties and all in that connection. So what they received as a consideration for the sale of the business to the company was money, debentures, shares in the company was being received. Subsequently, over a period of time, what happened was that these debentures were mortgaged for £5,000 by Salomon as a security for a borrowing which was being made. Over a period of time, the business, which was now a company, it failed. The party who was required to recover the money took up the matter for liquidation purpose. The lower court decided that this company was a mere sham and brought an action against Salomon, stating that company is just a name sake, but actually it is Salomon, and the entire amount need to be recovered in order to indemnify the debts that the company has to repay to the borrower, to the lender. Salomon had 20,001 shares of the company out of 20,007 shares of the company, which means only 6 shares were with others. 20,007 shares were issued by the company, only 6 shares were with others, 20,001 shares were with the Salomon. The lower court decided that the company, whatever dues are there to the lenders, which it need to be repaid back, and it has to be recovered from Salomon. The matter went for appeal, and the House of Lords arrived at this judgment, stating that one of the salient features in companies we come across, and we try to say, it is an artificial person. It is independent of its identity. It has its own separate legal entity. It is different from the shareholders. Even if all the member shareholders will die, still the company will continue. This same stand was upheld by the House of Lords, wherein the doctrine of corporate personality was taken into consideration, and the decision was arrived at the shareholders. Let the shareholders have substantial number of shares, no problem of the company. Like in this case, Salomon having 20,001 shares out of 20,007 shares of the company. But still, shareholders can't be personally liable in the event of the bankruptcy, insolvency of the company and the repayment of the debts. Company's debts, what company is unable to pay, that cannot be recovered back from the individual shareholders. So this House of the Lords judgment reversed the judgment of the Court of Appeal in that case. So this gives an understanding that the Companies Act, with the landmark judgment lifting of the corporate veil, while the Salomon and Salomon judgment upheld corporate legal identity as a separate existence. Another landmark enactment is the Competition Act 2002. We do get, okay, 2013 Act, 2002 Act. Yes, these are very recent ones. which are there. This act, in the act, there's a concept called as an act is denoted by three different identity. One, how is it called as? One, there's a short title. Short title in this case is the header of the slide, the Competition Act 2002. Alternatively, there's a long title to an act, what is put down in the entire one sentence, an act to provide, keeping in view, and so on. And it ends with incidental thereto. That is long title. That is the name of an act. And the third way how an act is identified is by the number, the serial number in which year it is being passed. For example, 26th of 1980. It means 1980, the year the act was being passed, and 26th enactment in that year with what is being passed. So there are three ways how an act is being identified. The long title of the Competition Act 2002 tries to state that this act is meant in order to ensure that competition in the market is made available. There is no dominant position exercised by any single dealer in the market, dealer, supplier, business person. Prior to Competition Act, it was a MRTP Act, Monopoly and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. That act being repealed, this act came into existence in tune with the new trends. Protecting the interest of the consumers and ensuring that consumers are able to exercise the freedom of choice in the market. Overall, which will result into the development of the market, development of the nation. Simultaneously, this act also aimed at establishing a body and authority in order to monitor, supervise, and to ensure the various aspects of the act. And that body is the Competition Commission of India. When we look into establishment of a commission in the second line, it is the Competition Commission of India. A landmark case in this case is Reliance Jio. One may recall how Reliance Jio entered the market and the scene prior to Reliance Jio entering into the market, where huge price was required to be paid for the data pack and all, be it calling, be it net pack and all. Reliance Jio entering into the market free. So many amount of data pack per day free. So many amount of data pack can be utilized. So it tried to create in the mind of the people that you need it when people were managing with less earlier. Initially as freebies, and subsequently the objective of the target, we do study various pricing strategy. In marketing, we do come across various pricing strategy, and one such pricing strategy is predatory pricing. Be it marketing, be it economics, predatory pricing is spoken about, wherein the supplier who is in a dominant position will try to dominate the market at that point of time, price the product in such a way initially which is below the cost price of the product. Just imagine a business person who is selling the product below the cost price. A business is meant to make a profit and not to make a loss. So the initial target is to destroy the competition in the market totally, to establish a dominant position of one's, and in the long run, definitely to recover the amount. So this was predatory pricing case against Reliance Jio, which is a landmark case amongst the various cases if we relate to under the Competition Act. The matter was taken up by the Competition Commission of India. And Competition Commission of India, which is a body created under the Competition Act to adjudicate these matters. These are special bodies which are being created. The tribunals. But Reliance Jio went in appeal to the Supreme Court against the verdict of Competition Commission of India. The Supreme Court held that when such a body is existing, Competition Commission of India, which is having the powers under the Act in order to take decision to curb the anti-competitive practices in the market, then that body will be the sole authority in taking up these matters. And that body's powers, like feathers, it cannot be cut away. Like cutting away the feathers of the birds, that body's powers cannot be cut away. Just because the appellant is Reliance Jio does not mean that there will be a separate law for Reliance Jio and separate law for others. The Competition Act is established in order to protect the interest of the consumer and in order to promote the competition in a market, not to curb the competition in a market. Cutting down of the competition in the market is not favorable to the consumers in the long run. So Competition Act plays a significant role. The Negotiable Instruments Act 1881. Yes, 1881. Now we are in 2021. This act is continued with amendments, definitely, to the act, but it is the same act of 1881. Prior to 1881 also, there were negotiable instruments in India. But this act was established in order to amend the laws relating with negotiable instruments prevailing at that point of time, which is continued even today, including the new forms. And three important things are there covered in section 4, 5, and 6. Promissory note, bills of exchange, and checks. These are widely being utilized. And check includes the truncated image of the check. Promissory note widely in existence, which we've tried to look into demand promissory notes. Every borrower, while taking a loan from a bank, financial institution, signs a demand promissory note. In business transactions also, there are promissory notes which are there, and bills of exchange, including accommodation bills, do come into picture. So there's an act which regulates this. And whenever we come across negotiable instruments, very popular, immediately somebody will say, Section 138 of Negotiable Instruments Act. What is this Section 138? Section 138 is the hype. What is this Section 138? It is nothing, it is dealing with dishonor of the check. That is a word. Legal term is dishonor of the check. Layman's term, out of the law, people say check bouncing case. The law does not say anything called a check bouncing. It is a dishonor of the check. So when A party has issued a check to B party and B party is depositing the check in the bank and it is going through bank clearing and the check gets dishonored in the process of the bank clearing, then whether a case can be filed under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act? Yes or no? The answer is not always yes. And one such exception to that thing is if there is a check which is given as a gift. There's something called as gift check. Stated as the simplest of the thing. You are attending your friend's wedding or a birthday party, and you have given a check as a gift in that wedding or birthday party. Check is given as a gift, not for any monetary consideration, business consideration. And that check eventually in the process of bank clearance gets dishonored. Can the person who didn't receive the money on that check file a case against you? Can your friend file a case against you for dishonor of the check under Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act? The answer is no. There is no offense being committed. The reason is the check is given as a gift check and not for a consideration. There are numerous cases for it, and one such case cited is in front of you of Nitin Chedda versus Swastik Vegetable Products Private Limited. And this case was decided by the Honorable Punjab and Haryana High Court in restitution of conjugal rights civil matter. SEBI, the regulator of the capital market. The savior of the investors in the capital market, mainly the small investors. So SEBI Act came into existence in 1992. 88 SEBI was being formed. 1988-92 Act was brought into existence, and the earlier body controller of capital issues was being scrapped off. What is this objective of SEBI when we try to look into? Is the establishment of a board. Earlier, just now we saw establishment of a commission under the Competition Act 2002. And here the term is board. Board, which board? It is the Securities and Exchange Board of India, with a sole objective to protect the interests of the investors in the securities market. Healthy functioning of the securities market has to take place. To regulate the securities market was running like a wild horse, let free. On the backdrop of 1992 stock market scam led by Harshad Mehta, the SEBI Act came into existence. When we try to look into this parallel things between the 1992 Harshad Mehta scam and between the 1992 SEBI Act coming into existence, with the sole objective, this wild horse has to be regulated. Small investors are losing out their money. On one hand, we do witness farmer suicide, and on the other hand, we have witnessed, which is also a sad fact and a reality, that small investors in the capital market have committed suicide. For them, even a 1 to 2 lakhs was a big amount at that point of time in 1992. We are not talking about 2021. In 92, 1 to 2 lakh was a big amount on retirement. After 35 years of service, person used to get 2.5, 3 lakh. That's it. As the entire money on retirement, the provident fund, gratuity, all dues which are there. And if that money is gone, there is no other source of livelihood. There are people who have even gone to the extent of committing suicides due to financial difficulty. So SEBI Act came into existence in order to protect the interest of all the investors in the security market, primarily the small investor. There have been various participants in the capital market who have been indulging into insider trading. And one of the objectives of SEBI is to curb insider trading, to stop it altogether. And insider trading is an activity wherein certain price sensitive information, which is unpublished, which is not made it available to the public, are being utilized by insiders to the company, such as the top board members and all, in order to engage into purchase or sale of the securities, they themselves, or indicating to someone else, their family members, their relatives, known persons, to buy or sell the shares of those companies, of which they have inside information about, maybe merger, maybe demerger, maybe a dividend, maybe a bonus, maybe a rights issue, maybe change in the management, any such information which is price sensitive and not yet made to the public. And this is the case of Pranay Roy and Radhika Roy, NDTV, New Delhi Television, NDTV, at least the TV channel people are aware of. The founder, the wife of the founder, Pranay Roy, the founder and the chief executive chairperson, Radhika Roy, wife of Pranay Roy. They had inside information about the company because they are the founders and the key persons in the organization. They made wrongful gains through insider trading. Also, Sanjay Dutt and his associated entities were involved in this. When the matter reached to SEBI, after perusing the matter, identified that wrongful gains were made by the founders of NDTV Pranay Roy and Radhika Roy, and SEBI took the following actions. They were restrained from accessing the securities market for a time period of 2 years because of the unethical gains which they made by indulging into insider trading of 16.97 crores of rupees. And this amount, 16.97 crores, is a very big amount when we relate to. SEBI also restrained them from buying, selling, dealing in securities directly or indirectly. Not only restraining, but SEBI asked them to jointly or severally, they being husband-wife in a marital relation, to pay the wrongful gain of this entire amount of 16.97 crores along with interest of 6% per annum from 2008 to the date they repay that entire money. So whatever unethical gains have been made by engaging into insider trading has been stated by SEBI that they need to repay that amount entirely along with interest. So very fine case of insider trading. Bankers Book Evidence Act 1891. This is again during the colonial rule, and the act still continues with its amendments. One of the very short act running into just handful of pages. This act is a special act. The Law of Evidence Act is there. That is, the Indian Evidence Act is there. This act is a special act which tries to say that certain matters relating with the records, the books that need to be maintained by the bankers, wherein the account holders details are maintained, be it the depositors, saving bank account, current account, overdraft account, the loan accounts and all. How the records need to be maintained, where the records can be furnished and where the records cannot be furnished. This act is meant for it. Whenever there is a general law and there is a special law, both of them are existing. So the Bankers Book Evidence Act is a special law and the general law is the Indian Evidence Act. Then in such a case, there should be no conflict that which law will operate. One has to be very clear that whenever there is a general law as well as special law, the special law will override the general law, which means the special law prevails over the general law. In that case, if generally professor comes in a classroom and says, all boys, you will do this work, or all MCOM first year students will do this work, this is the task being assigned to everyone. But the same professor further adds and says that both the CRs, it is compulsory to attend that program. So this is a special law. All the students, it includes CR, but when the second statement is made that all the CRs should also be there, that is both the CRs should also be there, which means there's a special law. The CR cannot escape out of the thing. So like that, the Bankers Book Evidence Act is a special law, whenever it is there along with the general law, and the special law will prevail over the general law. And there is a Latin maxim for it, and it follows the principle of generalia specialibus. Now, these are not English words which are there, specially highlighted. Generalia specialibus. These are Latin terms, which denotes the same message which I indicated just now. So in the judgment by Honorable Delhi High Court, in the case of Om Prakash versus Central Bureau of Investigation, it was held that Section 2A of the Bankers Book Evidence Act will prevail over Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act. Bankers Book today includes even the electronic form of records maintained by the bankers. Someone will say the ledger and books, manual entries of 1891 and all are gone away. Today everything is computerized. Let it be computerized. Bankers Book Evidence Act includes that aspect also. Records maintained by the banker of the customer of the account holders in all form, including in electronic form, the printouts which are being maintained, or it is maintained in a CD, in a pen drive, in a hard disk, in whatever form the records is being maintained by the bankers. So the law always try to upgrade itself by including it. So even though Indian Evidence Act tries to speak about electronic evidence, and the Bankers Book Evidence Act is speaking about also the electronic records maintained by the banker, but the Bankers Book Evidence Act will prevail over the Indian Evidence Act. So the special law will prevail over the general law. This is the understanding which is being given in this landmark judgment by the Honorable Delhi High Court. The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, one of the very recent code. The bankruptcy word, insolvency, bankruptcy, these words we have come across quite often. There are business enterprises which says that our liabilities exceeds the value of the assets. The realizable value of the assets are lesser than the liabilities we owe to others. We are in a bankrupt situation. The word insolvent, way back if we try to relate to in 11th standard when a learner starts studying commerce, the concept of solvent and insolvent in commerce is being explained by bookkeeping teacher. So Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, which tries to consolidate and amend the law relating with insolvency, appointment of an insolvency professional, creation of an Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, in order to ensure that the value of the assets further does not decline, and to pay to the persons by realizing maximum from the value of the assets, which are very important. Without delay, speedy bankruptcy procedure need to be followed by appointing an insolvency professional, drawing up of a systematic insolvency plan for that purpose. Landmark case in this connection is Essar Steel. In August 2017, a petition for initiating the insolvency resolution process against Essar was admitted by NCLT. Whenever there is a special body, the general body will not come into existence. It becomes dormant. So NCLT is a special tribunal created in order to handle the company law related matters. NCLT and NCALT for the appeal matter. National Company Law Tribunal, and in order to take up the appeal, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. So National Company Law Tribunal, National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. And then further, if the matter has to go for appeal, then it will go to Supreme Court in that case. Petition went in front of NCLT against Essar. The matter was taken up by the Supreme Court of India subsequently, as just now I indicated, okay, further where the petition will go for appeal. Supreme Court upheld the authority of the Committee of Creditors, wherein the Supreme Court stated that a Committee of Creditors duly appointed under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, when these Committee of Creditors are performing their duties using their commercial wisdom in an unbiased way, which is indicated in the resolution plan, which is approved, taking into consideration all the interest of the stakeholders, there is no biasness in that, then the Committee of creditors' wisdom penned down in the resolution plan will be implemented and no obstruction can be brought into in this process in order to stop or restrain the insolvency resolution process. So in this connection of the case of the Committee of Creditors of Essar Steel India Limited, wherein they had decided that in this way the distribution of the funds will take place. It was not a biased view and opinion. Supreme Court upheld this decision of the Committee of Creditors and it automatically led to ArcelorMittal to take over Essar Steel through this landmark decision. The Information Technology Act 2000. Day in and day out, we do hear in this information era, information technology, there are incidences of cyber crime and e-commerce offences happening during the lockdown, social distancing, globally during this COVID-19 pandemic. There's a steep increase in the cybercrime and electronic commerce offences which are there. There are people who have lost money in thousands, in lakhs and in crores, and there are hackers who are sitting round the clock in order to tap such money and to commit the offences. It's not only the technology is made available in hands of the people, the technology has to be safe, and in case the users of such technology who are making online payment or any data theft happens of theirs, any encroachment on the privacy happens, which are of digital data, then the act which will come into existence is the Information Technology Act 2000. This is the act. There's no Cyber Act. The cyber crime is covered under the IT Act and electronic commerce. Crimes, offences are covered under the Information Technology Act. Apart from this, there is Indian Penal Code 1860, which is there. Indian Penal Code IPC 1860, General Law. Information Technology Act 2000, Special Law. Generalia Specialibus. Special law will override the general law. And wherever there is no provision under the IT Act, IPC is there. That does not mean just like that an offence is committed by a cyber criminal and there's a victim, the IT Act does not cover, does not mean the offender can run away. There are charges in the charge sheet being imposed on the offenders under the IPC then. A landmark case of Pune. Let's try to look into. Audiences are from Pune and this is the case of Pune. It's a call center. Emphasis call center. What happened in this call center? The staff, they had the assignment. The call center had an assignment of the Citibank account holders from USA, international. It's an international call center. So any account holder of the Citibank USA had any problem, then they would dial the number which would get connected to Emphasis call center situated at Pune through the World Wide Web. The staff in the call center used to attend the call and resolve the problem as an employee of the call center. While leaving the call center every day, they were not allowed to carry with them any data stored and all. It so happened that 4 employees, when they resigned from the job of this call center, Emphasis call center, somehow they stole the PIN numbers of the US customers and subsequently they contacted those customers, created another email ID of those customers, used these PIN numbers in order to indulge into offense of stealing the money from the account to the tune of $350,000. This is a 2005 incident. You can calculate, okay, the rate of US dollar to Indian rupee, maybe 72, maybe 70 at that point of time. Multiply 350 by 70 or 72. A huge amount which was being made by them. Police committed several, police levied the various charges. Arrests were being made of several persons. The court held that, based on the charge sheet, the court held that, and various evidence which were put in front of the court, there was an unauthorized access which was committed. Money to the tune of $350,000 were being squandered away in this scam. Fraud was being committed by using this PIN number. Charges were levied under the Information Technology Act 2000 and the Indian Penal Code 1860 of Section 420, very popular, this number 420 we know, and that is of the section of cheating, fraudulent activity. Further, other sections of IPC 465, 467, 671 were also being levied. Police recovered immediately at that point of time 8.5 lakh rupees. But still the amount was there. What is the concern over here is a fraud took place. E-commerce transactions, okay, are there, but on the other hand, with here, not even the US customers making the payment, their PIN numbers were accessed by the people, and US customers lost their money from the banks. So Information Technology Act comes into picture along with the Indian Penal Code. Law of insurance. Insurance is a big activity. In case of law of insurance, there are various statutes such as the Insurance Act 1938, Life Insurance Act 1956, Marine Insurance Act, General Insurance Business Nationalization Act, and so on, which covers. So one need to look into, okay, Insurance Act is there over and above, whether it's a life insurance, marine insurance, fire and all is covered under the general insurance, fire, house and all are covered. One has to look into the provision. Insurance law tries to relate to 7 principles which acts as a pillar in insurance law. Uberrima fides is a Latin words. What it denotes is there in the bracket: at most good faith, insurable interest, causa proxima, indemnity, subrogation, contribution, loss minimization. In case of an insurance contract, complete information has to be revealed by both the parties, insurer as well as insured, uberrima fides. There has to be an insurable interest of the party who obtains an insurance policy on the life or on the goods. Causa proxima, the case is there on the next slide, which I'm going to relate. Insurance is not to make a profit, but to indemnify for the losses. That is the principle of indemnity. Whenever the compensation is being paid in case of insurance, then the residue which is left over, say damaged vehicle is there and all, will be taken away by the insurance company. The party will not be and sold as a scrap. That is their lookout. Party will not be allowed. The insured will not be allowed to make any gain out of that. In case of double insurance, then there will be a contribution pulled in by other insurers. And whenever an event happens, a hazard happens, there's a fire or there's sea water entering, then loss has to be minimized. One cannot just like that stand and say the goods are insured, let it burn. A landmark case is of Hamilton versus Pandroff, and this relate to causa proxima. What happened in this case was, on the vessel, there were bags of rice being there. And the vessel was on board the sea on its voyage. The seawater entered and a cargo of rice was being damaged. Most important in case of the loss, what is to be identified is what is the cause of this event. So in this case, the proximate cause, causa proxima, plays a significant role. A landmark judgment by Lord High Chancellor of Great Britain. Now, even though these cases, when we look into, okay, it goes to the British colonies, it goes to other parts of the world, someone will say whether these case laws are applicable in India. Yes, these case laws are applicable. One is the persuasiveness. The matter is persuasive, therefore it is applicable in that case which is there. It will be considered by lower court till the apex court in India, even till date in 2021. The seawater entered, it resulted into damage, agreed. How did the seawater enter? The rats had made a hole in the pipe, and due to which the seawater entered through that pipe and the cargo was being damaged. The judgment by Lord Herschel stated that the immediate cause was the seawater, not the rats. What caused the damage to the cargo was the seawater entering. That is the thing. How seawater entered is secondary, but the seawater has caused damage. So knowing and understanding the proximate cause is very important, which in other words means the remote cause will not be recognized for claiming the policy cover in the event of a damage. Intellectual property rights, IPR, plays an important role. And in case of IPR, it is the Copyright Act for authors. It includes even the video. So if today's session is being video recorded, okay, there's a copyright of this with the Department of Commerce, Savitribai Phule Pune University. Then there will be acts of trademark and merchandise mark, a symbol, a logo, a sign or a color of a Coke or a Pepsi or any other thing which is there on the product, which helps in identifying it. Patent Act for the registered patents. We are going to see a landmark case in this connection. The Designs Act in case of engineering drawing designs. One of the very important landmark judgment is of Basmati rice. Rice Tech, a company from USA, was granted a patent by US Patent and Trademark Office. For what? On Basmati rice. Patent number 5663484 was being granted on 2nd of September 1997. How can Rice Tech and US company get a patent on Basmati rice? A matter was taken up at the UN level by India and Pakistan. There was a huge protest being made by India and Pakistan that no such patent can be granted by US Patent and Trademark Office. It is a pure cultural theft. The traditional knowledge which is there, the products which are there, India and Pakistan pre-independence era, okay, this is the region, the United India, where the Basmati rice is grown to a great extent. No doubt India exports Basmati rice. A substantial amount, more than 75% is being exported out of India. But where it is grown is important. Who is the consumer is not important. After this hue and cry of the cultural theft and Basmati rice patent to be withdrawn by the US Patent and Trademark Office, finally, the US Patent and Trademark Office withdrew the name Basmati patent being given to Rice Tech Incorporation. Any company from any corner of the world, developed nation, just because it becomes a developed nation, cannot steal the traditional knowledge and the intellectual property rights of the developing nation. Basmati is one such instance. There are several other products of which we know day in and day out, turmeric and other names such as In Marathi आपण कारली म्हणतो, करेला in Hindi, the jamun, neem leaves, imli, adrak, tulsi, ashwagandha, all these has several medicinal properties and daily use property. A developed nation can't overnight claim patents on these products stating that they have developed something in their laboratory. They have not developed, and this does not belong to any single individual. These are traditional knowledge which has been carried on in the developing regions of the world, India and all, since ages. The Consumer Protection Act 2019 meant for the protection of the interest of the consumer. We do have 1986 Act which was being repealed by this 2019 Act of the Consumer Protection Act for timely and effective settlement of consumer dispute. In the case of Maheshwari Steel versus Chandigarh State Power 2018, the Honorable Chandigarh High Court held that the seller has to be beware. The old concept was there, buyer beware, caveat emptor. Caveat emptor is there. The buyer will be alert and all, but that does not mean seller can sell any fake products and all. So the caveat vendita principle, the seller has to be beware. Seller can't sell any faulty product under the guise of it being good product, was being held. The Consumer Protection Act is meant for timely and effective administration. We did have 1986 Act, and why 2019 Act? Still, this is a betterment over the 1986 Act for speedy addressing of the grievances of the consumers. The Maharashtra Protection of Interest of Depositors in Financial Establishment Act 1999. Many a time we do have various schemes, Ponzi schemes. You invest this money, it will become double. You will get 20% return, 30% return. Remember one thing, no returns. The principal amount will be taken away by one who is introducing such schemes. So this act, MPID, is to protect the interests of the depositors. And in a case of Suresh Raju Shetty versus State of Maharashtra, wherein the Bombay High Court decided in the judgment in 2017 that the accused Suresh Raju Shetty had floated a company in 1995 under the name Om Sai Capital Leasing and Finance Private Company. There are various such finance companies in every lane to loot the money of the investors by giving various attractive advertisements and all. The complainant invested the money, complainant 25 lakh and the relatives of the complainant 8 lakh. Total 33 lakhs were invested by them. The scheme was 25% interest per annum. In 1995, I'm talking about, so don't look at the interest rate today. In 1995's interest rate, at that point of time, interest rate in the market were around 18% per annum. Yes. So 25% interest rate was being promised. 33 lakh was taken away. Money was not refunded. The interest was not paid. When this matter came up in 2017, the Bombay High Court held that Suresh Raju Shetty, who has floated this company, has to deposit 2.45 crores of rupees. The amount decided by the Honorable Court. Indian Contract Act. Coming to the last act, because time is running. There are numerous acts which are there. I will touch upon the last one, Indian Contract Act 1872. Most important act in case of contract between the party, and the key terms which are there is there has to be consensus ad idem, meeting of the minds of two people who enter into a contract. When I say one word, sweet, you have to decode it in the same interpretation in your mind. Sweet means what? I can't have different interpretation. You can't have different interpretation. That is consensus ad idem, meeting of the minds of the contracting party. And most often we have come across this key statement. All contracts are agreements, but all agreements are not contracts. So which means agreements is a broader picture, a bigger circle. within which a smaller circle exists contracts. So only those agreements which are legally enforceable by the court of law are contracts. Otherwise, it cannot be stated as a contract. I tell you, I will give you a samosa party. This is an agreement. Is this a contract? Answer is no. And I failed to give you samosa party. I said you I will give samosa party today evening. I didn't even turn up. No samosa party. I did attend your phone calls also. Can you file a suit against me? The answer is no. Because even though it was an agreement, we had both agreed it is not a contract. Contract includes consideration. Here it was just an unilateral. I give you. So free consent plays a very important role amongst the parties, and free consent can be vitiated by any of these 5 ingredients, that is coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, or a mistake. Landmark case, Carlyle versus Carbolic Smoke Ball Company, 1892. In this case, the defendant company, Carbolic Smoke Ball Company, gave an advertisement stating that whoever will use their products, the smoke balls, simple word medicines, and after using it as per the directions of the company, still if they get infected with influenza and they become sick, that is cold, simple words, then the company would pay them £100. And further, not only it was not a puffery in the advertisement, just a hollow claim. The defendant company further stated that it has deposited £1,000 for this purpose. So if any claim comes, to pay. So the honesty was also being indicated by that. Louisa Carlyle purchased that smoke ball, used it as per the direction thrice every day, systematically, from mid-November 1891 to 17th of Jan 1892. And at a later date, she was attacked by influenza. So she became sick. She filed a suit against Carbolic Smoke Ball Company stating that they have to pay £100 to her because she used the medicine as per the direction. Still she became sick. The defendant company, in their statements, defended by stating that we are not bound to pay £100 to Mrs. Carlyle because there is no agreement, no contract between us. The Court of Appeal rejected this. Whenever we say Court of Appeal, the lower court had approved that, but the matter went to the appeal and the Court of Appeal unanimously rejected that. Such a company statement is invalid. This contract is fully binding, even though it is unilateral, it is fully binding. Because the defendant company didn't only make a hollow claim in their advertisement to sell the product, they had deposited £1,000, which showed their sincerity, and out of that the money need to be paid to Carlyle. Contracts enforceability. We are coming to the concluding 2-3 minutes of our short interaction. Contract is an agreement enforceable by law. It is legally binding under the Contract Act. And in the event of breach of contract, if everything goes smoothly, there is no problem between the contracting party. But in the event of breach of the contract, wherein one of the party violates the legal duty, then legal remedy is there to the aggrieved party. And the legal remedy is to put back the aggrieved party in the same position where they were prior to the breach of contract, or to put them in a place where they would be after the performance of the contract by this. So repositioning the aggrieved party plays a very significant role. And this is the base of every understanding for the learner of commerce Indian Contract Act, which places a pillar. A breach of a contract when one of the party fails to perform his or her part. The aggrieved party who is injured has various courses of action open. examples of breach of contract are X contracts to deliver and sell 500 kgs of rice to Y at a certain price. X breaks the promise. It is a breach of contract. P hires Q ship to move a cargo of jute to Chennai. Freight is paid. Cargo of jute is loaded on the vessel. Q ship does not go to Chennai only. Breach of contract. Day in and day out, we come across n number of examples of breach of contract, such as employment contract. Simple employee-employee relation, there is breach of contract. Vendor contract, wherein the vendor to the supplier, there are breach of the terms of the contract. The essential elements of a breach of contract one need to identify is point number 1. When the matter goes in front of the Honorable Court will look into whether there was an existence of a valid contract, yes or no. Whether the plaintiff has performed or tendered the performance. One has to go to the court with clean hands. That person didn't do, therefore I didn't do. The counter action will not do. Plaintiff, one who is putting forward the plaint, one who is complaining, one who wants to seek out the legal remedy out of this has to tender the performance. There has to be a breach of the defendant's performance which need to be proved through evidence, oral documentary, and due to such a breach by the defendant, there has to be a damages resulting in. Types of breach of contract are 2. One is anticipatory, second is actual. Anticipatory is what? We enter into a contract with a person to supply the goods. The war breaks through in that country, like now in the European region and all small nations, Israel and all, there's a war. We entered into a contract in the month of February with a supplier in Israel to supply certain product. War broke out, internal disturbance of theirs, due to which the supply cannot take place. The scheduled date of supply was 30th of June 2021. Whether it is a breach of contract or an anticipatory breach of contract. Scheduled date is 30th June. The war may stop at any point of time. Things may become normalcy and the goods may be delivered. We don't know. So it's an anticipatory breach. So until and unless the date comes for the performance, it is an anticipatory breach. And when on the date of performance, when the contract is not being honored, then it is an actual breach, which is there. Breach can even occur during the performance of the contract. The contract is to be performed. A singer enters into a contract with a theatre, an orchestra singer with a theatre, stating that next 3 months the singer will sing in that theatre only. So the contract is a continuing contract for next 3 months. It is not one song to be sung. And during that, after 15 days, the singer stops singing. So during the performance of the contract, actual breach can occur. What is the remedy? There are remedies to the party. In that case, the remedy is available to the non-breaching party. When the party who has breached the contract has failed in performance of contractual obligation, the legal remedy that can be sought from the court is to uphold the person's right, to redress a breach of the law, and to order the breaching party to pay damages. Damages are monetary compensation. In law, injury and damage, both these words are different. Damage is a monetary amount to be paid. And the word damage and damages are also different. What are the types of remedies available in the event of damages? 1. Suit for specific performance. There's a Special Relief Act 1963, which is a supplement to Indian Contract Act 1872. So decree can be passed by the court for the performance of the act. As promised, the parties need to perform. Suit for injunction can be obtained under the Specific Relief Act as well as under the Code of Civil Procedure. Injunction is a restraining order by the Honorable Court not to perform an act which the party is performing in violation of the law. This can be a suit for rescission under the Indian Contract Act. Rescission in simple word is cancellation of the contract. So all the parties are discharged of all the obligation. Contract kept open need to be performed. There it has to be formally cancelled and registered. The cancelled contract has to be registered. It has to be in writing. Suit for quantum merit, where one party terminates the contract, the other party in proportion to the work done would claim the amount. If there's a contract for building a
Something has gone wrong at his end. Okay, let me just check. I think it was almost the end. Let me just check. I think, ma'am, he has lost his connectivity or something. He just suddenly lost. Maybe some current issue.
Why don't you try calling him, ma'am? Try calling him.
I'm just trying calling you. Yeah.
Put yourself on mute, madam, and then try.
Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. There seems to be a problem at his end. He's not able. I mean, there's some power cut or something. His call, he isn't taking his call. So let's just wait for another 2-3 minutes. I'll keep calling him, and then we'll decide on.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Madam, he is not lifting the phone. I think he has some issue. He is neither lifting the phone nor he is responding.
What time is it now?
It's already 4:15.
4:15 already.
He wind up or what? I mean,
See, try WhatsApp call. Did you try
I'm
WhatsApp call?
trying. He is not lifting WhatsApp call also.
Oh,
That means he must be having some connection with the WhatsApp call. I mean, phone ka WhatsApp, or he is using I don't know what for his internet connection. I don't know what he is using because he is not lifting the WhatsApp call also.
hmm.
I've sent a message, but it seems he's not.
Has he seen the message?
No, he's
WhatsApp
not.
message is not
Nothing.
seen.
Hmm. Suddenly it got lost. Maybe.
Okay, let's wait for 2 more minutes and then we'll wind up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Let's try that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, yes. I think I'm getting some call. Yeah. Hello, he has got some problem, ma'am. He's not able to connect. Something is wrong with his modem. It seems it's not getting connected. So we'll stop the session. He has asked me to conclude it and stop it. He doesn't. Hello, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
We can just end it. So I hope you had some information from what he said. He tried to connect with all the legal aspects of how a business can be affected through different acts and laws, and he tried to cite giving you a case related to that and how it helps. It's not directly through the environment and all, but he tried to put the legal aspects of business with every act and how every act actually is applicable to business. That is what he tried to do. So let's see. I mean, in case if you have any questions related to that, you can put those questions in the box. I'll take it to him, and maybe sometimes he'll answer that questions. So we'll wind up for today here, and thank you all for your presence. We have around 34 students attending the class. Okay, any feedback which you want to give us? Any of you?
That would be really nice, students, if you could give us any feedback about the session today and what sessions would you like in future.
And for the next thing, we will definitely put that as.
Rupali, can you please repeat? Rupali, can you please repeat? It's not audible clearly.
Ma'am, I was saying it was a great lecture, and he had given valuable insight on the topic. And whatever we have got from his lecture, we'll put that in the assignment and put that on Teams.
Yeah, sure.
About the feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone more would like to give a feedback?
Lecture was actually very nice and informative. As a commerce student, we only know the SEBI and Companies Act and some of Competition Act. But the another act we get to learn today and some extra information and case study related to that was actually awesome. And we actually feel bad कि ये disconnect.
Yeah, I know he got disconnected. Probably there were some questions which you had to ask him. So he's not able to connect himself. That's what he's saying, that modem is not getting on. So it would be wonderful if you guys make a question for yourself. I can always ask him and he can always put us that answers. Maybe we can have another call with him sometimes for the answers if he is free though. Okay. So yes. So can we wind up any more? Only Rupali and Sarvesh, or should we wind up now, ma'am? Should we wind up?
Any more suggestions for future topics that you would like to be you are interested in learning?
And we'll for sure let you know once we discuss and think about that. So thank you so
Sure.
much for this initiative. It was
Okay, whenever you think of something that you need to learn, you think it's important for you, your career, please WhatsApp us, message us, put it on the groups, and we will make the necessary arrangements. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Ma'am, please take care of the remaining part.
Yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you for being here. The lecture was definitely very informative. So we look forward for some more good lectures to come up. Okay. Chalo. Thanks for your presence. I have downloaded the attendance sheet twice. Okay.
thank you.
Thank
you, ma'am.
Yeah. Bye. See you on Monday.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Bye. Okay, so I take a leave. See you then. Should I leave? Yeah, bye.
Sure.
Bye.